look at a flower, have you ever looked at a flower? Or you have looked at it, given it a name, and passed it by. Or you say, how beautiful, let me smell it. All these are distractive actions which prevent you from looking at that flower.
The speaker is Krishnamurti, one of the more challenging and creative men of our time. During the past 4 decades, the writings and talks of Krishnamurti have attracted an increasing audience in Europe, Asia, and America. This series represents the first time that Krishnamurti has allowed his talks to be filmed. In this second of 8 programs, filmed principally in the Ojai Valley in California, Krishnamurti, in public talks and in informal conversation, speaks directly to the fundamental problems of today. In particular, he speaks of the problem of change and suggests that the real problem is not changing society, but changing ourselves.
Various forms of entertainment, including churches, but it has no meaning. Is it possible to empty the mind of the known? One must have asked this question vaguely or with a purpose, because one suffers, one has anxieties, whether it's possible to go beyond, or one has vague hints of it. Now we are asking it, we are asking it as a question which must be answered, as a challenge which must be responded to. And this challenge is not an outward challenge, but a psychological inward challenge. And we're going to find out whether it is possible to empty the mind of the known. Look at that oak tree. Actually look at it. You are the observer, and the oak is the observed. There is a space between you and the thing, which is the tree. In that interval of space is time. Right? The time that has to be covered to see, that's the object. In that interval of space, there are all kinds of ideas which actually prevents me from seeing the fact of that tree. When you no longer name, no longer thought functioning as knowledge about that tree, then is there a space between you and the tree? Then, if you go into it very deeply and observe all this, then the observer is the observer, which is not the observer identifies himself with the tree. Observer is the image which has been created. He is the censor, the entity that judges, compares, all that. Now, and then he looks at the object. Either the tree or his own experience, or his image, his relationship with somebody, another. So the observer is the image looking at the image which he has created about the other. So the relationship between the observer and the observed is not a relationship. It's 2 images looking at each other. Now, if the observer when the observer has no image at all, which is quite a tremendous problem, inquiry, which is meditation, all that, then the observer is the observed. What is the observer. Not the observer is looking at what is.
When the observer is the observed, and the observer has always acted as though the observed is something different from himself, then he could act. But when he realizes that the observer is the observed, all action ceases on his part. And therefore all effort. And therefore there is no fear at all. This requires a great deal of inward inquiry, inward observation, step by step without coming to any conclusion.
Why do you choose? What is the necessity of choice? If you see something very clearly, as we just now saw what freedom implied, and when the mind is only free that it can see the total, when you see that clearly, there is no choice. It's only the confused mind that chooses.
Awareness takes place only when there is no choice, or when you are aware of all the conflicting choices, conflicting desires, the strains, just to observe all this movement of contradiction. And knowing that the observer is the observed. And therefore, in that process there is no choice at all, but only watching what is. And that's entirely different from concentration. And that awareness brings a quality of attention. In which there is neither the observer nor the observed. When you really attend, completely attend. Like when you're now, if you are really listening, there is neither the listener nor the speaker. And that state of attention brings about an extraordinary freshness, youth, not youth, in America they use that word terribly. The extraordinary sense of freshness, quality of newness to the mind. And this emptying of the mind with all the experiences it has had is meditation. If you observe very closely, and that's one of the most arduous things, and that doesn't need effort at all, just to sit of an afternoon whenever you have time and leisure to look at it. To look at a flower, to look at yourself, to look at all the movement of your thought and your feelings and your reactions. Just to observe without any choice, which is the beginning of self-knowing. And without self-knowing, man is caught everlastingly in confusion and misery.
The thing that so strikes me in the talks and in the conversations that I've listened to is the contemporaneity, the immediacy, the directness.
Yes.
Of
our problems.
What we're talking about,
yeah.
And of our problems.
Yeah.
And I am at the same time so struck by the fact that most of the things of the world in which we live are designed in one sense simply to distract us from an understanding of the problem.
Yes, quite. So isn't it really, we have developed a whole network of escapes. And we are caught in those escapes. And those escapes are preventing us from understanding the problems. The problems are there. Whether, you know, India, here or Russia, anywhere, they're there. But I'm not at all sure if religions, organized religions, dogmas, sects, have not taken us away from the central fact of being able to face these problems. Not translate them, you follow what I mean? Not try to go beyond them, but actually face them and see if we can't dissolve them.
And thought creates the past, the present, and the future, which is time. There is time by the clock, chronological time. We're not concerned with that. If you have to keep an appointment, have it, and so on, you must have the chronological time of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. But we're talking about the psychological time, which thought has bred. And that time is the product of thought. I have had that pleasure, I am going to have it, and I shall have it. This time quality is created by thought, bred, put together by thought. And thought is time, and it is time that creates fear. And without probing into this time, pleasure, thought, we are always bound by time. And therefore time has never a stop. It's only when there is an end to time that is something totally new.
You speak in terms of creating not a new consciousness, but a new society.
New society in relation to a mind that has completely undergone a revolution with regard to the psychological structure of society.
Yes. Which would mean a society which is not in time?
No, it has to, all society has to be in time. But the individuals who have freed themselves from this structure, psychological structure, will be freed of time. Therefore, they won't be slave to time, but yet obey the laws of time in society.
It certainly isn't modern man who has invented time, but
No,
the concept has an awful lot to do with time.
I think it is because he made himself incapable of facing what is the fact. Therefore, he has a concept about the fact inwardly, psychologically, and according to that concept formula, he functions. Therefore, the fact, the formula, and action are contradictory with each other.
Yes.
And therefore, he's in constant battle with himself. So is it possible to act without idea? Idea being organized thought, and therefore all formula.
Yes.
It's only the free mind can see the whole. Right?
But he must have some experience of the whole in order to see it.
No. To see the whole thing, you need a very sharp mind, very clear mind. A mind that's not biased. A mind that says, I like this, I don't like.
Well, you have eliminated the mind that is in a pattern or expects to be led, or it won't ever see the complete truth. But does that necessarily mean that the mind that is free will will see the truth.
Look, if you want to see the view of that valley from the hill, you take a survey of the whole thing, don't you? That means your mind is no longer merely fixed on the Thacher school or a particular school. You look at the whole valley. So here is a whole complex map of life, business, all the rest of that, very complex. And to understand the whole of that, you must be free to look. Therefore we say, free the mind from fear. As long as there is fear, that fear will take shelter in a belief. Christian or doesn't matter what belief. Because fear demands comfort, security, hope, and all the rest of it. So, being afraid of something, death or something else, that fear must take shelter in something. Therefore, whether you believe in reincarnation or not, or some other belief, is the same. All beliefs are the same, because they're essentially born out of this fear. So really the question is, can fear be eliminated altogether?
It's like inquiring into if there is such thing as God. I put it in quotes. That word God is so heavily loaded that has almost lost all its meaning. If one wants to discover it, if there is or if there is not, how does one proceed? Obviously, to find out, all types of belief must come to an end. And therefore, which means all form of fear must come to an end. Belief is a form of hope. And I hope because I'm in despair. And I invent a belief, a security, a state of mind which says there is something which is permanent. And I believe in that. And that belief, obviously, not only conditions all examination, all perception, but it prevents the total inaction.
Sir, what is thinking?
You ask me what is thinking. So my mind begins. Let's go into a little bit. First, I can say, I really don't know. Then we can begin to analyze and say it is response of memory. You ask me, what is my name? And I know because I've repeated so often, I tell you immediately. Now, you ask me a little more complex question. It takes the time interval. In that time interval, the mind is in operation to find the answer. But if you ask me a question, something which I don't know, which nobody knows, which no book or philosophy answered it, then I can honestly say, I don't know. I don't.
It's both in a significant question and a significant
answer. I really don't know. Now, when I say I don't know, I really mean I don't know. That means I'm not waiting for an answer or expecting someone to answer me or looking for an answer. I don't know. Which means my mind is completely alert, but I'm not looking because I don't know where to look or to whom to ask. Now, in that state, I begin to discover. Because that state is real freedom.
Such a mind is the religious mind. no longer seeking, no longer demanding experiences, is not caught in visions. And such a mind has an activity totally different, at a different dimension, which thought can never possibly reach. Thought has a place, very small place, but when one realizes that, thought has no place at all. Which doesn't mean you live on ugly little sentiments, emotions. So one can function normally, healthily, sanely in this world with a mind that is not cluttered up by thought. And it's only such a mind, the religious mind, that can know something beyond all the imaginations and structure of man's hope.
There is no perfect society. And society doesn't want man to be free.
Society does not want man to be
free, because freedom means, according to socials, freedom means disorder. Revolt means disorder. Revolution means disorder. So society says, forbids that. But man is always seeking freedom. But freedom merely outwardly, in relation to the social structure. Therefore, he is a revolt against society, but not revolt against the inner psychological structure which has created this society. I don't...
Yes. Therefore, the genuine radical is the revolution occurs within the human being.
Yeah. Within the skin rather than within the framework of social order.
Because we are taking a journey together into the whole psychological structure of man. Because in the understanding of that structure and the meaning of it, we can then perhaps bring about a change in society. And society, God knows, needs a total change, a total revolution.
All similarities should be distrusted.
Yes.
Huh? You know what I mean?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
I mean, psychologically, man has built this extraordinary structure called society. Because inwardly he is that. But outwardly he's going to lay down laws how to control that. But inwardly we have...
Yes, I follow.
Inwardly we are just wild.
It seems to me that society and the individual's inner makeup, that a society and an individual's inner makeup can be governed by quite different laws. In fact, be two quite different things. And I know much less about the laws that may govern an individual inwardly than I do about the laws that govern society.
Naturally.
And yet at the same time, from what little I know about the laws that govern society, I find I have a profound pessimism
with regard to
creating a new society.
Quite. So that's why, sir, the problem is not changing society at all. And we always go off about talking about changing society, good society, great society and all that. I think the real problem is, can there be a real mutation in a human mind? That is the real question. when that takes place, society will look after itself.
It is as if that human society may have evolved, but the human being as such has not.
Has hardly evolved. And that, of course, and that awakens a problem, brings a problem. Is there evolution? Psychologically, not outwardly, there is. But psychologically, is there such thing as evolution? That is, becoming better, changing from this to that, or creating an inward perfection. All that implies time. And time is essentially, through time you can't possibly change the psychological factor. So if one can put away all idea of gradual revolutions inwardly, then we have to face the fact what is inwardly each minute and see if that fact, if what is cannot be absolutely be eliminated immediately. That is the real question. I don't know.
There is no end to talking, to words, to attending meetings and reading. But attending meetings, reading, discussing has very little value. If attending meetings, discussions, and all the rest of it is merely a stimulus, then you are dependent. As people are dependent on LSD, on music, on pictures, on doing something. And as long as one is dependent, one is in conflict, one is in despair. And one has to come, not through reading, to discover the whole process of knowing oneself. For the knowing of oneself is the beginning and the end of all misery.
This has been the second of 8 programs presenting Krishnamurti, whose singularly challenging approach to the problems of our time places him outside of any simple category like philosopher or religious leader. Subsequent programs will explore love, fear, conflict, the aging of the body, and death. In his next talk, Krishnamurti will speak of freedom from fear.
This is NET, the National Educational Television Network.